You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor. Today we have a repeat guest. He is one of my all-time favorite people. His name is Selby. He is a very knowledgeable man, so wise. You're going to learn so much from today. I'm going to invite him in right now and we will get started. If you have any questions, as usual, just chat them in and we will get to them as soon as we're able to, and let the games, if Instagram will allow me. Hello!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm doing really well. Yourself?
Good. I'm just making sure my ring light is...
I was going to say, I'm in daylight. I can't do that trick you can do.
It's coming very handy because I don't have to hold the phone. But
right, I was tabletop stand for mine. Yeah, but I use daylight behind the camera, much easier.
Yes, exactly. How have you been? What have you been up to?
I was on a podcast episode probably about 3 months ago, and the guy who did it finally released it. But now it's putting out bits and pieces everywhere, on all the platforms. I've been like, oh, gotta like this, gotta like this, gotta like this. It's like chasing rabbits. It's so funny.
That's great business for you. That's
yeah,
awesome.
It was cool.
Good.
There's visibility is good, it's and having a lot of fun in Clubhouse still, and then also doing this sort of thing, the Instagram Live. It's fun to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
great.
Very
so thank you for having me. In English. Thank you for having me back.
My favorite guests of all time. I was talking to my partner this morning. I was like, babe, I'm going on with Selby. He's like, you seem very excited by this. And I'm like, very big news.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So I figured we could pick up kind of where we left off last time, deepening.
If you can remember what it is, I don't remember now.
We left off on talking more about masculine and feminine dynamics and leaning into those in relationships, trusting either ourselves more with our leading energy, and then being able to lean into our partner. So
yeah.
Anything that goes with that concept, I think would be fair game for today.
I think I have a lot of fun with that. Yes, definitely. I should do one thing.
I had a Q&A, I think it was 2 days ago, and I had someone... Oh, can you hear me? Are we good? Okay.
Yeah. I just turn my phone on DND so I don't get interrupted by phone calls or anything.
Very smart. Yeah, mine will probably happen at least once. So for those watching, if I suddenly go zero dark 30, that's why. I had a Q&A and I got a lot of questions about, why does he do this or why does she do that? And we can only answer to the best of our ability within 30 or so seconds without knowing them specifically. Yeah. But my curiosity that I wanted to talk to you about, what do you think spurns people to want to get to the bottom of their partner's behavior?
Probably because it bothers them. Usually that's the thing. It goes I'm annoyed about this. What's going on? Yeah. What's wrong? And oftentimes it can be whether they go, it's my fault, I'm going to blame myself, or it's like, it's their fault, what's going on, and why do they think that? Why do they do that? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that's something Allison Armstrong talks about a lot, is women tend to go inward, and we do some self-inventory and blame ourselves long enough, and then we do wait a second, it's not what's wrong with me, it's what's wrong with them, and we turn it outward onto our partner, and then blame them.
Actually, quick sidebar, Allison is doing her audiobook of Queen's Code, and it's doing this whole thing.
Yes.
Like a 3-month, 2-month class.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to sign up for it and do it. It's going to be fun.
Ooh, okay, I'll join you. That sounds fun.
Yeah, basically the book I think is like 20 something bucks.
Yeah.
But if you want to do the course, it's like 79, but you're getting I don't know how many classes. It's going to be like a dozen classes.
Yeah.
On Zoom, just that's a bargain. So yeah.
That would be very fun. Yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. I feel like I have based a lot of my life on her teaching. Thank goodness.
She's one of my favorites. Yeah, there's probably about 3 main people I've studied with, and she's one of my favorites too. So I agree with you in terms of the feminine piece. So,
yes. Yeah. So I think it does. We want to get to the bottom of the energy or whatever the behavior is, because it does bother us, or we think that's one of the questions the woman asked. She's like, my boyfriend, he doesn't plan date nights. I'm always the one planning date nights. How can I make him motivated to, and put that in quotes, ask it more? And so I told her, take your foot off the gas pedal and give him space to be able to do that. But I'm curious if you have any other advice for
Well,
her.
the thing is, first of all, that yeah, she needs to advocate the role of leadership in that particular place so that he can take over. The other part, though, is also he's got to be encouraged and also praised for doing it, because the truth is, for us men, to be totally transparent, we like to not, we like to be done with things like you complete the goal, put our feet up. So to make plans can be more effort. So being encouraged to do it is always good too. We'll happily do it, but it's almost like we want to be like, valued for doing it. That's kind of one of the things that one of our values is to be like praised. The masculine likes to go like, it's like when a woman says to us like, you did a good job, part of me goes, oh, so cool. I feel much more, not received. Well, received is one word, but that's, being approved of.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah. And the approval piece is so key, because it, for at least what I've noticed in my partnership, it bonds us more, because experience of, oh, you approve of me, you like me, you see me positively, I want to stay close to you and be close to
you. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what else do women need to know about men? You're like, well, how much time do you have?
I was like, how much are we gonna do now? So besides being physically different, we're also emotionally, mentally different. That's like the obvious piece. I mean, John Gray with Mars and Venus, it's clear we're on different planets in a way. So to understand the way we focus on things, because in a lot of ways, the simplest way of putting it is that men and women are opposites. Yeah. Meaning that women basically open up, whereas men close down, not close down, but they wrap up. It's like we go focus on the goal line. We're more at the beginnings. So the energy's got to meet in the middle. And so the challenge for men and women oftentimes is we think the other person's like us. And Alison, this one too. Alison's one of my favorite quotes of Alison is, she says that the problem is women think men are just hairy women. Yep. And it doesn't work that way. And the things, for example, when a woman's upset, again, this is one of the things I borrowed from her as well. When a woman's upset, our instinct is to fix it, because we're good fixers. We want to be results oriented and be done with things. So let's fix it so we can move on.
Yes. When
a woman's upset, though, what she really needs is space to be able to vent. And so for us to be able to simply be present and hold space, which is not what we're trained to do, is the most loving service we can give to our woman.
Yeah.
So she can be free just to let it out, because the other part also is, for us, we get defensive. When she's venting, we think, it's like, back away sort of thing. We're afraid of being, chewed out and upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because most of us have that little boy inside who's still very available to us. So oftentimes we have this fear of being, punished for something. So when we recognize that our role is actually to be a bigger place, not a small place, but a bigger place, and be really present without having any judgment either way or movement, is the most trustworthy thing we can give. And that's the thing, when we can be trusted and when she can trust us, she'll let go more easily.
That's very true.
So the safety of having that space where we can just say, you know what, whatever you need to do, to say, to express, to vent, I'm not going to run away. Because that's the other part for us, we're just like trying to fix and run away. So no, just be present and let her vent. And the only thing we need to do is just simply be able to let it keep coming until she's done. Don't say you're done yet. That's not a good thing either. Just simply say, is there anything else? Add more. Be very invitational versus very demanding.
Yes. I can personally attest to how calming and soothing that was. And that's why I'm like, okay, I'm spending the rest of my life with you, because it felt like this calming effect. And he would just be like, okay, like anything else? And I'm like, why aren't you leaving? And he's like, you just had a feeling like we're all good. And I'm like, damn it, I love you.
Curses, he didn't run away.
Yeah, I won't be alone forever. How calming. But it's a fear. I think the more messy and loud the feminine expression is when we're younger. I mean, for obvious reasons, when we go through puberty, everybody's feeling and thinking.
Right.
Sometimes too much, sometimes not enough, all at once. And we don't really feel safe a lot of the time as women, expressive, because we get either called a bitch, or we get called too emotional, or, oh, girl tears, like, gotta shut it down now. And it's such a good point that you make about that defensiveness. A lot of the couples I work with, that is a number one complaint, but also something both of them notice. Like, I noticed I got defensive, or I noticed that he got defensive when I brought this up. And I think that's a foundation we can all work from, is to not take it personally. Oh, yeah. And his voice, like, hey, this behavior that came from you is something that activated this in me. Trying not to shut down immediately, because your partner's hopefully coming to tell you something because they care and they want to get close, and we like sharing information, and men don't always, unless we're a safe person to tell the truth to.
It's true.
situation because we as women like to punish and yell and like be mean, and that's how we change other people's behaviors, and then guys end up shutting down so much when we do that, and it's just not the, I don't think it's the effective thing to do in a
Well, no.
relationship.
And the challenge also is because, like saying with women do that punishment stuff, that's really a learned behavior. They don't have to do that, but that's
Correct.
the way they've been trained to do it because the way the culture develops it.
Yep.
So we end up with these two partners, basically, again, sort of heterosexually speaking, the man and the woman, is that we're living on these trained behaviors which don't fit together. If we could drop all that crap and be authentically real with each other, we could change everything.
Yeah.
You know, because the thing is, for I mean, this thing I went through was I was very, I mean, just a little history for myself. You know, growing up in a very traditional old-fashioned family in England, my dad was kind of the macho guy, not like big muscle macho, but just very like, I'm taking charge, I'm running the show. Yeah. You know, you do it my way and screw anybody else type stuff. And I didn't want to be that. I just felt so disjointed from that, partly because of my Piscean nature. So basically, I became much more gentle. And what happened is I became the nice guy in my relationships. So I ended up dating powerful women because I was attracting strong women in leadership.
Yeah.
And I become the passive, almost feminine guy without realizing it.
Yeah.
And so looking back, I can look back at my past relationships and see where I was so not in my authentic nature. Because I didn't know there's a choice between this nice guy and macho. I didn't know it was a third choice.
Right.
When I discovered how to be a masculine man, it was like, oh, now I get it. Like everything started to make sense.
Yeah.
And also what I did wrong made sense too.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything changed since that point. And frankly, more men can get that understanding. I mean, it's, you know, I wish it was easy, but apparently for most men it's not, because we're not raised that way. Our dads weren't that way, and most of our parents didn't teach us the right pieces.
Correct.
So people watching videos like this can learn from us, hopefully, because we've learned.
Goal. That is the goal. I know that something you said sparked this thought. I'm sure I've talked about it in my own head before, but I don't think I've said it out loud. So forgive me if the articulation isn't right.
That's okay. Yeah.
But that whole training and that experience of, if we're noticing our mom treat our dad a certain way, or the converse, our dad treat our mom a certain way, going more with the mom to dad example, if our mom is one to punish or put down or make the male partner feel small or emasculated and just very quiet, then we get this archetype in our mind, this blueprint of, oh, well, that's how men are. And men also probably want to let that out, but they're just not going to fight. It's like, it doesn't hit the worth it factor for them. They're just like, whatever, like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And then they get complained at for not opening up. Meanwhile, women don't realize, like, we hold a lot of, not all of, a lot of the power in being able to be a safe place for men to open up to, and not go with that, what was modeled for us growing up, of like, complain at him until he does something. No one wants to feel that way. I hated it growing up too. We'd go to the store, we'd, you know, whatever it was. Oh, I wish you would have told me we had a coupon. I wish you would. And I'm like, how about we start with thank you for doing this thing, and then let me know that something else could have been done differently, but don't make it about me as a person. And like, I have a lot of grace for my parents and for a lot of parents, because they were doing the best they could with what they knew at the time, and who knows what they even modeled, because a lot of the times, the further you get up in the generations, the less that was spoken about. And so there's this kind of cone of secrecy and these scripts that we're operating on generationally that we don't really know where, you know, what exact generation it started at, and people just keep perpetuating it. So
absolutely
effective. Yeah.
That's why I talk about how, taking one example, but abuse is a hereditary pattern, but it's done through behavior, not through genetics.
Correct.
And so, and you know, I remember Bruce Lipton talks about this in Biology of Belief, about how we're imprinted very young, is that when we're very young, we don't have discernment or conscious ability to decide what's right or wrong. And so those archetypes you talked about are right in front of us. And there we go, that must be the way it is, because there's nobody else showing us differently. And so those adults become the role models we embed in our unconsciousness, or I should say our unconscious, as the way life is. And so, fast forward to adulthood, because, and so our parents did the same thing when they were kids with their parents. So the generational patterns keep feeding forward. And as we get to the point of adulthood and we start wondering, like, why am I doing the same thing my dad did or my mom did? If that's the question you ask yourself, good, you're aware.
Yes. Yes. Start asking that question.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, so now what do you do about it? You know, I'm grateful because my master's in spiritual psychology. We did a whole, like, what they call healing of memories. We go back and unpack all that wiring so we can rewire in the way we wanted to. Because most of us don't, you know, like with your work too, the same thing. I'm sure you do the same thing where you go back and rewiring, so to speak, to transform people's default beliefs into what they intend to have instead.
Yes.
Because those defaults aren't usually what we want.
No, no. I know that's definitely true for me. And in many ways, I'm so grateful that some of my defaults are the way that they are, and I'm able to perpetuate. And then in the more relational sense, I would think like business acumen and intelligence and scholastically, I'm glad my defaults were the way that they were. When it comes to more of the interpersonal and relational skills, that was something that I had to relearn, renegotiate time and time again, because that wasn't what I was raised with, was not what I wanted to continue to perpetuate, nor is it something I want for my kids. And so that was a huge motivator to be like, okay, it's not only going to change myself, my level of relationship, but children to come too.
Absolutely. And for me, I mean, you know, my parents were together 60 years until my mum passed away. So I had that imprint, which is great. I have that long-term relationship. But how it was executed, that's the issue. So that's the thing we have, is we have a template or an example provided to us, and there's going to be good pieces and bad pieces. That's the thing. The thing is that we take all of it without realizing it. Then you have to weed out what doesn't work, and that's the intentional work we do for ourselves and for our clients, is to really start sorting out what is it that I did inherit, which I'm glad I got, and what is it that doesn't work for me. I can unpack and take away and then remove and replace it with something better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm glad you got that yourself, because you figured out what was definitely things you're saying. Yep, that was great. And
yes.
Stuff, not so much.
I don't love it. That's what I say a lot with my clients. So polarized in their like kind of negative thinking of like, well, I hate this. And I'm like, maybe we just back off the really charged language. And I just lump things into like, I love this and I don't love this.
There you go.
Change that into something I do love, and rewiring those beliefs, again, changed my whole life, my whole landscape. I don't think I would have ever been able to be with who I'm with now at any other point had I gone in and done that work, because he's so strong but so gentle and so kind, and I would have completely demolished his masculinity had I not gone in and done my own inner work of like, you are not the man relationship. It is okay to trust, like chill pill, do not freak out, it's gonna be fine, like even the high pitch to myself, and then it would turn out fine. And I'm like, okay, he might be onto something here. He's so remarkably calm. I want to scoop with that, rather than you need to be just as stressed as I am because we are freaking out inside. Like,
yeah. And the thing, I mean, the other part of that, which you want to add another piece, which is the thing that most people don't get, is like, because we have those unconscious patterns running, that what happens is that we're going to meet the reciprocal. That there's a thing called dovetailing patterns.
Yes.
So if you're raised in a family where the dad was a workaholic, so you believe that men will do that, you'll be looking for a partner, if you're a woman, who's going to be abandoning you, basically.
Yep.
And so until you rewire the circuitry, and this is the good news in a way, careful I say this, is that if you look back at your relationships and see that the failures or the things that didn't work for you that are so clearly not what you wanted, notice if there's because for me, I have to look back and go, oh, there's some sequential patterns. I absolutely know that this thing that I'm experiencing wasn't just at one time, it happened in several relationships. And because I'm the one who was in all those relationships, I know it's decided me to fix.
Yes.
That's the doorway into fixing it. Because that's the thing, you know, and so the patterns you inherited will be patterns you'll be almost radiating out to bring in your reciprocal so it fits. And that's the wonder, the magic, and the pain of this.
Well said. And it also speaks to, I'm not sure, boundary wise, I think there's super enmeshed boundaries where there's like none at all, and it's just people are like this in their families, and then there's some where it's like, so there's so much space between. My upbringing was more on like the close side, a little bit of enmeshment, but like what therapist didn't have that growing up? So, you know, it's kind of a job. But I remember working out of that, and there was a shift in partnership that I had previously years ago. And I remember something had happened, and I went to my parents about it because that's who I went to for advice. And I remember now, like at the time I didn't know what was happening, but looking back on it, of course they were going to take my side, not only because I'm their kid and they love me, but that experience was why would they have viewed that behavior as different? Because it didn't fit our script. And so go to people who already have the script that you do, they're not going to be as likely to challenge you or to be like, oh, that was really good of this person, or that was really messed up of this person, depending on whatever the behavior is that you're voicing. And I remember like breaking up and getting back together as one does. And he was like, you can't go to your parents with that kind of stuff again, not in like a creepy, controlling way, but he's like, this is our relationship. Like,
Yes.
you have to. And I'm like, that's fair. Okay, I will take that advice. And much of the other parts of the relationship were not that great, but that was advice that stuck with me. And it's something from like, who would you want to go to? And when you go to them, taking their advice with a grain of salt, especially if they know you and love you, they're hardwired to have you pick the thing that's in your best interest, according to them, obviously. But yeah, you go.
The thing was to say, the thing is that one of those things is that if you go to the parents, especially when dealing with the pattern that they gave you, they're not going to change because they think
like,
it's normal.
what's wrong with that?
Exactly. So the advice or counselor offers, in a way, what you're saying is that you also want to see a neutral person, ideally a coach, therapist, whatever that is, because they will look at your stuff without attachment or investment or whatever. They're there to support you and see things more clearly, and they hopefully reflect back to you like a mirror would. So you can see, oh, now I see what's not working, and you about it.
Yeah, and that's where I think the art of self-disclosure, it's like a keynote speech I've given before to other therapists. Like, it's not that you obviously you're a person. You can't just shut your brain off in every previous life experience. Like, you can do a pretty good job of filtering it, but it lives inside of you. And so it'll get activated when clients bring certain things up. And if you're on the other side of it, especially, you can empathize more with humor of like, oh my gosh, I remember going through that too. You know, and asking them, like, would it help you to know that you're not the only one going through this? And some clients are like, no, and then I move on. And some clients are like, that would be so nice and so helpful. I'm like, yeah, don't do that stuff. Like, let's maybe not do that. I don't love it, and your partner probably doesn't either, because this is how he feels. And typically with couples, he's like, see, like, that's what I've been trying to tell you this whole time. So it helps to have somebody neutral who's championing the best possible behavior. It's not about what I want or what one partner wants over the other. It's like, here's the healthiest thing that we can do in a relationship by science. Why don't you try this instead? And here's a personal example, if it helps, that it actually does work. Like, take what you will from it.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing, and the thing for me is that when my master's program I went through was very experiential. So basically, that was the key. They said a lot of times is that if you haven't resolved something when you become a therapist, your client's going to bring it to you. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yep.
So in my program, which was a say very experiential, practical, we would actually be in therapeutic context every single weekend of the program. So we actually worked through our own stuff. So being there 2 years, not only did we graduate with our master's degree, we graduated with a healed experience.
Yes.
So that most of us, not all of it, of course, but most of our stuff was no longer a trigger reaction.
Yeah.
Like, I go, oh, I know this one. So when I see somebody else with it, I go, I know how you feel. So the empathy becomes easier. So obviously one of the gifts. And that's the thing, again, is that even in therapists out there, many therapists, unfortunately, haven't necessarily done their own inner work. They've gotten the academic experience,
but not
the experiential. So they walk through, like, going to work with a client, and they're busy like trying to hold it together because they're like nervous because their client's telling them stuff. They're like, oh, crap, that's my stuff.
Yeah, so true. I remember back in my grad program, there'd be people sharing, and this is not a shame or a judgment when I share the anecdote, to be ethically clear. This is more of a anecdotal, humorous moment that they share things. And in my head, I would be like, you know, this is to be a therapist, not to be a client, right? Like, that sounds like deeply personal information you probably have processed before you sit across from a client. And I'm glad, obviously, that they were in a grad program. So most of them ended up getting help with that and containment. And then others dropped out of the program because they realized it was too activating. And thank goodness they didn't become therapists at that time, because I don't think their clients would have been served well. And that's something we have to keep ourselves accountable for. And that's like a requirement when I hire people also. You must be in and have had your own therapy. You're not allowed in again, this is my business, so I can do what I want, but you're not allowed to see other people unless you have some sort of experience with it. You can't be in the chair unless you've been on the couch, is what it says in their paperwork. Some of them are like, okay, I'll go to therapy, I want to learn. And some are like, no, thanks. And I'm like, okay.
Choice.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that people can go through this journey from the professional side of things, but then be unwilling to do the work because they're not willing to face that demon that they've got inside.
Correct.
And that's unfortunate, you know. And I mean, frankly, those sort of people, I'm not going to say name names because I don't know the off the top of my head, but those people in that environment will tend to find their life never actually works properly anyway, because that dysfunction inside, because of that demon they're not willing to face, so to speak, is unresolved and it keeps on doing what it's doing because it's just, you know, it's the unconscious piece.
Yeah.
So that's the good news, is that when we do the work, we become healthier people. So we become also role models for people who want to get help as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is one of, I think, the coolest things I've seen in all my years doing this is having clients who I've seen long enough, or like in the beginning, they're like, I think being a therapist would be cool. And now, 4, 5, 6 years later with some of them, they're like, I see them on and off. They're like, I am going to be a therapist. I've had emails from previous students that are like, I'm applying for grad programs because this was so inspiring to take a class. Like, when the person's done the work and they love how much the healing has positively impacted them, you can tell, like, it exudes from people who have done the healing work, and they have a very high tolerance for sitting with a lot of stuff because they've healed a lot. And it takes active effort to go in and clear out those subconscious beliefs and replace them with new ones. We can't just go get rid of it, right? And that's a lot of the work, is like, well, I stopped doing this. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do instead? And like, I just stopped the thing. And I'm like, but you have to replace it with something healthy eventually, or something more life-giving eventually. And they're like, oh, this is why I've had trouble quitting, yelling or anger or defensiveness before, because I didn't know what to do instead. And that's of our conditioning as well. Just stop doing this. Or
like rewriting the code. Yeah, it's like rewriting the code in a way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So back to masculine and feminine stuff, since we started with it, we'll come back to that for a second too. That point about, recognizing that the masculine is like towards endings and feminine is more towards openings. That's such a key piece of the work, because in a relationship, that's one of the things also, is that sometimes what men and women don't realize when they're masculine and feminine next to each other is that they're in different directions.
Yeah.
And accepting that, and in fact enjoying the differences, because that's the other part about the thing, is the different behavior is so much more available when we start seeing it that way, because part of us goes, yeah, but they're not on the same page. We're always like doing this with each other. And so part of the work is to really recognize, one, the difference, but two, the positive experience of the difference, to see just how positive or how additive that is to the relationship. Because the thing is, you don't want to be a clone with somebody else. It doesn't work. Yeah. But it's the difference that makes it valuable, makes relationships so much fun and so much joy, because you're different and you get to all the differences. That's what makes it so worthwhile.
Yes. And seeing the complementarity, there's a lot of things that I think, being more masculine drive myself, there was a lot of necessary times that had to turn on, and that switch needed to be on. And then finding someone where I'm like, oh, I actually don't want to be at work more than I want to be at home. This is new for me. And adjusting and slowing down and doing less. The polarity, obviously, after time, it shifts. It's like kind of being like buoys in the water. Like, there's times where it's more on and times where it's more off, but it feels like reaching more of a nice equilibrium rather than a fight. And I think that's what so many couples start out with, or in dating, it's kind of like bulls with horns trying to like fight for who takes the lead and who takes, the masculine versus the feminine. And I think there's strength in both, and there's strength able to have fluidity when it comes to who can take the lead on what, and making it strengths based, not punishing and like weakness based of like, well, you did this, so you get to do that now as a punishment. It's like, you're the best at doing laundry, that is going to be your thing, and then I'm the best at this, so that'll be my thing. And outsourcing whatever neither of you want to do or are good at.
Right, and that works. The thing I'll speak to though is also kind of explaining or saying different way what you said. The masculine and feminine for me is on a spectrum.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we reside somewhere on the spectrum, and men generally towards the masculine and women towards the feminine, but it's not locked in. I mean, like you said, we have so you talk about boys on the ocean. I would say more about I don't know if I have an analogy for it, but the reality is for me is the fact that we do spend time along the spectrum depending on what we're doing. So yeah, it's true. At the beginning of a relationship, oftentimes when both partners, the masculine is this bullish energy trying to compete with. And there's also this energy, I think women have been, trained, educated, indoctrinated with the idea that being masculine is healthier than being feminine for women, because feminine is, quote, weak, whereas masculine is strong, which is absolutely, which is bullshit, to be clear.
True.
I've said this before. It's like, nature is mother nature, not father nature. That's a pretty powerful energy right there. So understanding the femininity is massively powerful. That allows for so much more creativity to happen. So when women accept their feminine magnificence, and I like using that term myself, they realize that being feminine is actually healthier and stronger for them to be in the masculine.
Absolutely.
And for when we're in a masculine, it's a strength too, but it's not a macho position. I got a reel I put out on Instagram and TikTok and everything else about how there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Because masculinity is never toxic. It's macho that's toxic.
Yes.
And so when we men realize that being masculine isn't about beating up other people, it isn't about selfishness, it isn't about my way or the highway, screw you, which is what the bad boy nature was, then we start to recognize being masculine is about being clear in direction about what we're up to, but also how much we care about those around us. And that isn't toxic.
Mm-mm.
So we recognize that role. We find that the masculine and feminine and that polarity, I'm not sure I talked about this last time, but how the more extreme we get on that spectrum when we choose it, especially in the bedroom, the more the attraction is created, the more chemistry.
Correct. The polarity, yeah.
So it's important to recognize that we may not live there all the time, but we can move there to create the connection we want to have with our intimate partners.
Yes, absolutely. And that polarity piece of it is so necessary for the desire in the relationship, creating it. Like, I'm more my masculine at work, but I'm more my feminine at home or when I'm off. And that took a while to cultivate. Like, my standard drive was masculine. My feminine took a while to cultivate. I'm almost experiencing the opposite problem. Business, and I'm like, I don't want to. Like, the tantrum is kicking in. Can I just pay someone to do this for me? And the answer is yes for some of it. And then I'm like, the lingering masculine is like, you don't want to outsource this because you can do this yourself. And I'm like, do I want to? No. Like, it's an evolution. And I think that's the long game. Not that it's a manipulation, but it's the long game partnership that we will have times where we are both in a more masculine or both in a more feminine or swapped. And that's the spectrum piece of it, and that fluidity. It helps to know that, because it could be a momentary time, it could be a few months, it could be a year, whatever else are the external stressors or variables. You know, did you just have kids? Was there a loss in the family? Was there a gain in the family? Did somebody take on another role at work? And that's a lot of the women I work with are it's kind of like the CEO level, and they love what they do at work, but they can't help but keep it on when they get home because they desire efficiency and they just would rather it all get done their way. And we have to work on softening and calming down that. Is it more important how it gets done or that it gets done? And then kind of like, by whom are these tasks getting done by, and learning to delegate and to not be doing all the time.
Well, the thing with this, and this thing about, we said earlier about the banging of heads.
Yeah.
A lot of women, when they're in a dating environment, this keeps happening because they can't find a man they can trust.
Yep.
Back to the beginning. And truly, because, and to be transparent, a lot of men don't understand this piece, which I'm grateful I was like on the leading edge, so to speak, last language teachers I studied with. But when a man is trustworthy, meaning his masculine nature is implacable, that it's strong, it's solid, and you can lean on it. For most women, when they get a man like that, they can go, oh, I can let that go now. So what you were saying is moving back into your feminine. That would only work with a man that is staying so in his masculine. He would take care of stuff, and you can trust that, and you can depend on it.
Yes.
And then it's safe.
Yes.
That whole piece is so key for many, and for my clients, a lot of my clients, because I work mostly with women, but all with women now, their basic role is, one is they're going to fight. They don't trust men because they've been so burnt before by men who didn't honor their own masculine.
Yep.
And two, they don't know what it's like to be feminine because they've spent so much time being a solo parent or being in relationships where they took care of the man and didn't let him be himself. Now, so it was kind of a two-edged sword where they didn't let him and he didn't take ownership. So both of them partners failed in their roles. But that place of, again, feminine leadership, personally, I've got a mission to be loud enough that women know it's okay to be feminine. But two, the femininity that's needed on the planet now more than ever is critical to our survival. So I'm kind of passionate about that.
Yes, I'm in that passion with you. And what you brought up a little bit ago about the toxic masculinity, I think it was like 2 years ago, like end of 2019, I was doing another podcast on what I used to have. And I was interviewing a male therapist and life coach. And the whole thing about toxic masculinity had just really started coming up in media. And I remember in that interview saying, like, I think what would be considered toxic about it is that it's a bunch of women saying that it's toxic masculine. Like, that's, yes, we have masculine energy, but it was a lot of hating of men and shaming of and feeling threatened by them. So putting them in an inferior position created like, well, I'm the alpha, right? It's like this bell curve that we see in different generations and decades in society. Who holds more of the power? Is it a patriarchy, a matriarchy? How can we
Right.
coexist peacefully? I think is more the direction to go, rather than I feel threatened by you, so I'm going to make you feel small and shame you and punish you and belittle you into what? Like, that's not healthy either, in my opinion. So I think
Right.
we're towards help, like more of a divine or healthy channeling of where are my masculine traits, where are my feminine traits, and learning to respect the differences between who we are and who they are, who, you know, who men and women are, and learn to live in that complementarity. And it's a really wonderful thing when we can strike a balance and feel that trust and
Right.
relax. Like, you mean I don't have to do everything? Oh, this is nice. Like, keep playing.
When it works, it is. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And part of that is the unfoldment, because the way I define it in some ways is the masculine is more about competition, the feminine is
Yes.
more about collaboration and
Yeah.
cooperation. So the energetic requirement on the planet now more than ever is that we need to start coming into more collaboration and cooperation, which is a feminine energetic.
Mm-hmm.
And so and men can do it too. So, and we talk about this being fluid. We both sides can be done. We can both sides can contribute.
Yep.
But the thing is, we have to recognize as men, especially even as masculine men, in fact, it's easier as masculine men, frankly, that making space for the feminine is almost part of our enjoyment versus feeling threatened by, because the macho is threatened by the feminine.
Yes.
So when we get, as masculine men, get this, and we step into a place of respecting, honoring, and serving the feminine, which is what my role has been for the last 15 years, then the feminine is more invited, more encouraged, and that creates more of a collaborative spirit that, frankly, the planet is desperately needing and yearning for. So we can actually come together, because this separation energy is what's creating more divisiveness, obviously, but also more trouble and challenge on the planet. So beyond relationships, we got work to do.
Yes, we do have work to do. I'm glad to be somebody doing the work and leading it. And it's so important for people out there, people, you know, watching now or who will be watching this in the future. You can start this work on your own internal self, on a more cellular individual level. Kind of check in with yourself. I did a post a while ago of women can't complain that they don't have a man if how they describe men is mean, belittling, and disrespectful, right? It's not effective. And if they
Right.
heard how you describe them behind their back, would they still want to be with you? And that's, you know, on a larger scale for friendships, for this, like, character is who you are when no one's looking. How do you experience safety, if you do at all? And if you don't, what could move you closer to that? Do you need to trust yourself more? Typically the answer is yes, and let your guard down a little bit. And that's what therapy and mentorship and coaching are so helpful with. We model that for the person, and we can push on them lovingly and challenge those beliefs that aren't really serving them anymore, are probably in fact causing a lot of issues in their relationships and dating.
Absolutely. Yeah, this thing is again, we talked about trust earlier, but it's such a key component, because a lot of it also becomes self-trust. You know, I took a lot in my work and in my posts and stuff about self-love, but self-love for me is an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Because people say self-love, oh yeah, just look in the mirror and you love yourself, it's fine. It's like, no, that's not it at all. Self-love is really the suitcase that everything else is inside of. You know, self-trust, self-honoring, self-respect, self-care, self-support, but also just self-reflection, to do the inner work. It takes a lot of self-love, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, to do the inner work, to face that stuff inside, because oftentimes we're afraid to face it. But when we have enough love for ourselves, we're saying, you know what, I'm willing to do the work now. I know it's your ideal client's my ideal client too, that when they're willing to do the work, we're right there for them.
Yes.
Which is so good.
Yes. And I think it's a very, people go back and forth on the quote, like, in order to love somebody, you have to love yourself first, any iteration of that quote.
Yeah.
My view is that it is true to some degree. And I have like a very long form post. I'm kind of like waiting until it feels the right amount of vulnerability to post it, because there's some, you know, personal info in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the beginning of it is, I don't think I could have recognized love until I loved myself. Because back when I was in the position of not loving myself or liking myself very much, I would either take whatever I could get, deny myself anything that was offered, or convince myself, largely subconsciously. There was this fight, internal battle, and it manifested as anxiety and depression when I was very young, this feeling of like worthiness. And I think when you learn to love yourself and accept all parts of yourself, you're more comfortable being near and in the presence of a partner who not only does that for you, that does that for themselves. Being around somebody healthy with healthy self-esteem when you're doing some inner work and going through the deep stuff still, it can feel suffocating. It's like, no, I don't see you the way that you see me, or I don't see me the way that you see me. And that can be heartbreaking to go.
Yeah, I remember back in the summer, I took it a long time ago now, which was about a thing called approval cup. And imagine you have this cup, and basically what happens is you always go out looking for other people's approval, because we do that. We've been trained almost to go out for other people's love, approval, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so this cup that they pour their love or their affection into, we sort of do things for them, and they go, "Oh, you approve of me, great." Pour some stuff in my cup. The problem is that cup has a small hole at the bottom, and the approval that they put in is like a very thin oil, and it pours out. So you have to go back and get more and get more and get more.
Yeah.
We start to recognize that we can fill ourselves up from inside, our own self-approval. Then our approval we pour in is much thicker. It's more solid. It doesn't move as much, so it doesn't go through the hole. So the cup becomes full with who we are. Then one, we're not needy for other people's approval. But secondly, we can then enjoy other people's experience without trying to get something from them all the time. Because the thing is we do is when we're in that place where we don't love ourselves fully, and so we keep looking for other people's love, there becomes this almost vampiric energy. It's like, I need that love. Like, give me the love. And, I've people I know in my life I've walked away from are basically energy vampires. They need the feed on other people to feel okay. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Fill yourself up first.
Yeah. And having this, I like that word, that vampiric energy. It rings true. Yeah. I can back to people I've met where I'm like, this feels a little lopsided. I don't think I'm getting from this as much as you're getting from this. And it doesn't mean that like is the standard. It always has to be. But time after time, if it's a repetitive pattern that I feel more drained than energized, or it doesn't feel equal if we're having those interactions, it's time to set those boundaries and not be around that kind of person. And it's not a shame or a judgment. It's an observation. I don't think we're a good match anymore, because the resentment is going to grow. And I don't want to feel drained when I leave an interaction with somebody or in a relationship time and time again. I want to feel enlivened and like I can fill my cup for myself in your presence. I think that's kind of what you're describing would be an ideal to move towards, rather than it being like, what is it, Oliver Twist?
Yeah, can I have some more?
Have some more. Like, yeah.
Basically, yeah. I mean, and that comes back into boundaries again. Back to that understanding that we also need to be willing to say no, be willing to walk away, be willing to put ourselves first, which is again something people haven't necessarily been raised with. It wasn't what I was raised with.
Me either. No.
So yeah. So I mean, a lot of this stuff we're talking about is not just about how do you have an intimate relationship. It's how do you have a functional life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the goal. Yeah, that when we start there, I think the relationship can fall into place. I haven't actually had to, maybe like 4 times I can think of, but those are like small things in the beginning when you're first getting to know somebody and their life and your life and kind of like coexisting together. I haven't had to work or fight or put in all this effort to be with the person that I'm with. It flows very naturally because we met at a time where we had done a lot of work on ourselves and we're okay with ourselves separately from ever having met. Like, I think we would be the same people, we obviously would be sad, but we'd be the sense of self and sense of confidence if we had met at any other point. And we met actually online, so it's like a Hinge success story. But I was on apps for a long time, on and off. I had met people in person in between that, and just something about him was like, okay, I think this is what people talk about when they say it's the one. And there were a few hiccups, but to learn how to be in a relationship, all of the work that it pushed on was like things I had done before that I healed. And I'm like, oh, if this had at any other point, I would have yelled, blown up, crying, this, whatever it would have been. And I look at it now as like, oh, those were growth points. I got past those. And that's why this is a healthy and successful relationship, because I didn't blow it up based on a delusion. I like checked the facts, or I redid my expectations, or I had a conversation out loud instead of in my head. There were so many things that, change and shift time and time again that make it healthy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I mean, for me, and this is my own personal journey. I've been single since I started this journey 15, 16 years ago. because I realized that I need to really get to know myself, but also because I know my work in the world has highest priority over everything else, except my relationship
Yeah.
with spirit. And so
Yeah.
any relationship, I mean, I've joked about this before, it's like, any relationship I want to be in has to add to what I'm already doing.
Yes.
And that's the challenge, because sometimes we think we have to give up certain things to be in a relationship. And of course, that phrasing, settle down, isn't a very positive term either. So it really is about discovering for ourselves our own value, again, self-approval, self-support, self-care, so that when we are meeting people, we can feel energetically if there's vampiric energy, as we said, or if there's somebody that actually adds value to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because I did have an analogy, I was talking about this on Clubhouse on Wednesday, no, Tuesday, early this week. I was trying to describe the Clubhouse, which is an audio app.
Yeah.
Our relationships, oftentimes people think relationships like face to face, nose to nose, like eyes to eyes. Problems, you can't see past them. You're stuck to each other, which is very codependent. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
When we recognize that relationship is really about being together, so you're like holding hands, connected, but you're facing the same direction, there's opportunity for real transformation and have a greater impact in the world. Because frankly, a relationship that's rocking that way, the power that brings, it has ripple effects out into the world around us, social circles, family dynamics, all those things. So the more people that are in healthy, happy relationships, like we teach and want to support people with, that we can then grow into a much greater society around us. We create influence, which is wonderful.
Truly. Yeah, I think it's life-changing.
Yep.
It is life-changing. Yeah. It's a positive spillover effect. And I think it touches people's lives when it's meant to. Like, we can hear certain, inspirational quotes or have certain experiences with people and set a boundary, not too early, but like we said it, we're like, eh. And then later on, we're like, oh, that's why this was set. Like, we listen to our intuition more, being able to check in with yourself and like what works best for you, and then acting on it and putting yourself first and not conflating that with being selfish. I think in a neutral definition, being self-serving is, what do I need? What do I want? So I can have that solidified, so then I can give to others. Because using the cup, and we can't, that saying, as the saying goes, we can't pour from an empty cup. Yet so much of us are kind of doing so, but then there's this approval of other people flowing through it, but we have none for ourselves if we pull it off that like
right.
And we're like, oh, this is kind of not what I was expecting it to be. I would like to feel better about myself, and doing that inner work, it's life-changing on so many levels: career, personal, interpersonal.
Well, I think we talked I think the last time we talked, I referred to the Jerry Maguire quote, "You complete me."
Yes.
Because that's the thing, is before this trap, is when I find my one, my soulmate, my devoted one, then I'll feel okay, then I'll feel complete. It's like, no.
No, you have to, I think people could word it this way. There's a great benefit to feeling whole and complete yourself, and then adding the person in.
Yeah.
And there's so many different, I think it was a few weeks ago I posted, there's so many different kinds of intimacy: intellectual, physical, spiritual. We can, I think in theory, it could exist that we get that from one or two people, but typically it's a widespread but close-knit net. And I think intimacy comes from, when I talk to colleagues like yourself or other therapists or coaches or mentors and people in the healing space. And then I have obviously physical intimacy with my partner and emotional intimacy with my family and loved ones. And you can get your needs met and wants met from different sources. And that's the healthiest thing to do, is having it be outsourced, but again, within a tight-knit community, because too much on one person is going to make them snap. Like, I can't meet all of my partner's needs and wants, because I can't even meet all of my own needs, because I'm a human being. I'm just one person.
In fact, more than that, I would suggest strongly that if you're in a healthy relationship, that if you're a woman in a relationship, part of your time must be spent with your sisters.
Yeah.
Because you need time to recharge in your feminine and be around the sisters, do the feminine things that he can't deliver.
Yes.
And for him too, to go out with the boys or get the men and play football or go hiking, whatever he does to recharge his batteries. Because part of the polarity piece is you've got to renew and recharge those polarities to make it really work in the relationship too.
Yes.
So it's so important to spend time in your life without the other partner. Not saying you need to avoid them, but it's like have a healthy respect for your own time with your friends and your connections, intimacy on different levels.
Yeah,
so,
that's
relationship. Yeah,
that's where trust comes in too. I work with so many women where they're like, he's not allowed to golf, he's not allowed to go out of it. It's like, do you want a servant or a partner? And they're like, oh. And I'm like, you can't. I get why. I totally get why you want to control it, because there's a delusional fantasy that happens for women where we find the one we're like, it's almost like a repetition of our relationship with our parents. If we had a good one, it's like, we're close, we're together all the time, everybody's always home. But most people can go back to their teenage years and remember, I just want space. Why are they always home? What once was comforting turns into something that's like neuroticism inducing.
Yeah.
And so having that ability to like trust them enough, I think it comes down to trust. Like, do you trust them to go do whatever they're doing, golfing, this, that, what have you? Is it that, or is it more that you want to monopolize their time because you think it's owed to you? There's some nuance too, I think, when people block their partner from having their own independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole conversation comes up about, if you're friends with somebody of the opposite sex, then the trust issues get really big. That sort of uncertainty, the sensitivity and stuff is like the panic, like, there was somebody are they interested in them? Are they attracted to them? It's like, you've got to learn trust, absolutely, but also you got to have the conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
You got to set up your agreed upon boundaries.
Yes.
That when one partner goes off to do something, the other partner goes off somewhere else, there is an agreed upon way of behaving in the world that is healthy, and also this honoring of each other. Because if you haven't got that, that's where it gets risky.
Yes. Yeah. Being able to, I think it was three things all flooded in at once. I swear I have hallucinations. My brain just works very quickly.
Well, there's a feminine thing, by the way.
It is. Yes. Oh, estrogen is one of the best drugs. But that experience of, if I have a strong sense of myself and work either an established or growing trust in my partner, if I love myself enough and have enough self-worth and have that strong sense of self, if something were to happen, when given that trust of like, yeah, go have fun, whatever else, I don't care if you have a friend of the opposite sex, what have you, do know that if the boundary is crossed, this relationship is no longer, and being able to adhere to that. So when you have less insecurity and you are a more secure person in yourself, you can not only trust your partner more, and if they betray the trust and that's on them, you can also stand strong if you want to make the decision to go, nope, you violated the trust, I don't feel comfortable moving forward, or you violated the trust, we need to make an honest an attempt and repair, because we're both human beings. And those choices are available to every person. When we're more insecure, we're much less likely to voice if it bothers us, and we're much less likely, if something were to happen, voice, hey, I'm leaving. We'll be like, well, I guess it wasn't that bad, like they just made out but they didn't sleep together. And I'm like, is that really what you want to say in your wedding vows across from this person? And that usually is the question that people are like, okay, well, that's fair, like I got to address this. And it's this strong sense of self helps you to maintain and adhere to the boundaries that you set.
It's the key thing. It's the inner journey. That's where it comes down to all the time.
Yes. I think as deeply as you know yourself is as deeply as you can allow someone else to know you. And do you trust yourself enough? I use like a scuba diving analogy with my clients. I'm like, we're just scaling down to like the floor of your psyche and like exploring from the depth, and then you can come back up gradually and kind of get some air. But you once you've met all of your dark parts and kind of have touched doorways of the ones you're like, we'll get to you in a little bit, there's not much that a relationship can shock you with. It doesn't mean you won't have a reaction to it, but it's not going to pull this feeling of being so defensive of like, how dare you make me face this thing about myself that I've been hiding for so long. It's like, yeah, I knew that. What's next? You're like, damn, okay, that person's really secure.
Yeah. So question, did you share all three things you downloaded, or just two of them? I'm sure I can catch them.
The third one is if you're with somebody who is insecure, and I've noticed this before with a lot of the women I've worked with, sometimes the male insecurity, and I would love your opinion on this too, sometimes male insecurity does not come across, for the most part, does not come across the same way as feminine or female insecurity. It can be like an overdoing, like an overcompensation to cover up from the insecurity, or it can be more in the subtle ways that men describe the way that they see themselves. And I noticed that with somebody I dated previously. And I remember like having an intimate, like close conversation and sharing like, do you see like how amazing you are and accomplished and all this stuff? And he kind of teared up and he had said, I don't see it that way. And it was heartbreaking, but that let me know deep down, like we're not on the same part of our journey that I would need the person to be at. And I had the utmost respect and still have a lot of respect for that person, and that they had to go on their own healing journey because we didn't see eye to eye on how wonderful they were, which was very heartbreaking.
Well, the thing for us, I think, a lot of ways with men, and I'm just letting it sit if it feels right or not. I think when I say it first, and then see if it feels right for me, in the sense is that for us men, because again, we love being approved of and being appreciated.
Yeah.
If the partner stops doing that for us, we may seek it elsewhere, and it may not be from a sexual place; it's more from a approval.
Right.
And we'll tend to find it from other women because men don't generally do with each other.
Mm-mm. And
so that's a pattern that we can look at and go, okay, so that's what happened. So then it's like, well, can she then up her approval game, so to speak, in terms of remembering what he is and what he's about, so he feels recognized and feels appreciated? Because that creates loyalty as well.
It totally does. Yeah. Loyalty is something I think a lot of people want, obviously, and benefit from in a relationship. And part of what I will share as a woman, part of, I think, why I used to withhold is not that I wouldn't get it from a partner, like that necessarily wasn't the issue. It was more, well, what if I do this and then I get attached and they leave? Or what if I do this and the person is more avoidant and they just don't really vocalize that they're appreciative of being appreciated? And then it kind of feels like masculine energy is like, well, this is a futile effort. Why did I even try? I'm not going to try this again.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I guess the biggest thing, and I use this a lot of times in my language things, was about, when all else fails, try honesty. Yes. Being able to communicate and say before you do the action, because it's a lot easier to talk about things you might be doing than things you've already done.
Yeah.
That phrase about, asking permission versus begging forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Don't do that in a relationship.
No. Definitely
talk about it, figure things out first. Like if you're saying, you want to go somewhere else to get for the men, if you feel like you want to go somewhere else to get approved of, let your partner know you don't feel approved of, don't feel appreciated. Let her know that, because it may be something she can help you with, or maybe something you just need to be honest and say it so you feel okay again.
Yes. And sharing ahead of time can prevent some really big ruptures of trust if we step out of a relationship, without permission or without acknowledgement. I think would be maybe a way to word it. Like, hey, I'm really feeling I want to go do this, is a much better phrase to hear as a partner versus, hey, I felt this way, so I went and did this.
Yeah.
And for women, we'll hang on often to the lie and how long it was withheld from us. And it's a pain point because our brain goes to, okay, if this was lied about and withheld from, what else? If you're capable of this, what else are you capable of? And we generally want to aim that in the positive direction. Like, oh my gosh, you planned a date to the level of the Bachelor. If you're capable of this, what else are you like? We want to keep it in the positive camp versus the negative, like betrayal. If this is what you could do, and then that's where trust gets ruptured and has to be either rebuilt with that person or with oneself. Yes. Clean slate and try again with someone else.
Well, the thing is, I'm just add the other loop to the part as well, the masculine side being drawn to being approved of, for the feminine, because it is about that sense of trust. It's about the safety.
Yes.
Because if he does things that break trust, she doesn't feel safe with him anymore.
Correct.
So it may not be about, it's not trustworthy, like you cheat on. It's like, no, I don't feel safe around you because you did this.
Yeah.
So to share, like, I have this concern that I feel like I might want to do that, that actually builds trust because the honesty is there.
Yes.
So then you create more security, more safety, and more connections. Like, there's some things you can do to repair before you do the damage, or preventative, so to speak, than actually going, making mistakes afterwards. This is the big work, when you really start to get clear. That's the other part for when you do the advanced class, so to speak, is for partners to really start to recognize when stuff shows up before you act on it. Share with your partner.
Yes.
Get to the point where you can say, I'm going to let you know this is what I'm feeling. What can we do about that? Versus what do I need to go do outside?
Yeah. Lean in. It's vulnerable. It's scary, but it can be done. And Barry and I are here to help you with that. And thank you so much again. I always love talking with you and being me, and I want to be respectful of your time and my time as well. So we'll have to do this again as usual. And I have a lovely weekend.
I hope you do too.
All right. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Take care of yourselves.